David Savage, a.k.a. Diz, and this is The Force Always.
Okay, so welcome to the show. This is The Force Always. A bit late in the week, or you could say early, but I will be doing another stream of another episode later in this week. Anyway, so let's just get into the Star Wars news. Look, there's actually no Star Wars news besides a couple of comics and some toys being released. You can check that online in Hasbro, or you can go to marvelcomics.com, I'd say. So check that one out. Besides that, there's not a whole lot of news. Also, a bit of an update. Still no word on Star Wars Celebration. The website is offline at the moment. It's obviously just sort of waiting to get things organised, see what's going to happen. But no actual news for that. But anyway, that's pretty much the news for Star Wars this week. Let's get into the views. Views, my story ideas that I have about Star Wars. It could be a movie, it could be a book, it could be a trailer, it could be a song, a story idea. And this week I've got something that I've had on my mind for quite a while, but I keep slipping my mind to mention it. I think what would be great for episode 10, if they will go ahead with 10, 11, 12, but episode 10, I reckon it's a real way out, far out idea that I have, but the possibility can be done, but it's got to be done with super secrecy, and I'll tell you why later on. But episode 10, even though I've got a number of ideas already that I've said what the story should be, but if you were to create the same production budget as the original Star Wars A New Hope back in 1977, which was 11 million US dollars, that's 11 million US dollars, technically that's about 20 million here in Australia. If you could sort of have a budget, meet that, and sort of go back to the model making, go back to the, recreating of companies, just sort of getting things started, rather than going through ILM and things like that, which is technically a Star Wars thing, but you could recreate your own, the own sort of companies to get this thing started. I think personally, when I look at A New Hope, which I did in the last week, it still stands up to a movie today. You can sort of see certain elements that are a bit behind, like some of the hairstyles are a bit 70s. Some of the colorization of the film is a little bit 70s, but still the actual film, as story definitely, but the actual look of the film still stands up to this day. And I reckon you could, if I had $1 million, I could create a Star Wars film. Whether it's good or bad, it's that's up to the beholder. But really, I think it can be done, and it would pay homage to what Star Wars is to the fans, and give interest to the non-Star Wars fans out there to go and see this. Star Wars does pull in an audience no matter what, whether it's underperforming or overperforming. Star Wars, the brand, is just massive. But I think the reason why you have to keep it super secret, which I said earlier on, was that if you were to mention this as a Star Wars film, then people would start upping the prices in certain things, production value, whether it's the actors, actresses, and things like this. Now, the way to cover this after is to have percentages of the film be given to the people at hand, but still within $11 million production budget. Limiting the percentages, because you don't want to use all the percentage for, giving it away to everyone else. But, you need to make some sort of money for the profit holders, the stockholders, and Star Wars itself. It's a business. That's the thing. But I think I think Lucasfilm can create a super secret project, a Lucasfilm episode 10 that meets the $11 million production budget for a Star Wars film. Now, I know that inflation and things like this is different nowadays, but I think you can do it. If I had $1 million, I could create something. It really depends on how you direct it, what you have in the actual, the canvas of the shot, if you were to say, and what the story is. If the story has a basic but a very powerful message, and it really does get, word of mouth, that would then really generate a lot at the box office. I think $11 million is not a hard area to meet, just in production, that is, to beat at the box office. And I think it would work itself in a way in so much good. Great for the fans, great for the interest for non-fans, and it would make a profit. It can be done. It just has to be worked out. It all really depends on the story and how the story is. But I think visually, what you have in the shots and how the shot looks, which is where a lot of this production value goes, you can really come up with something great for $1 million, $11 million US. It's a far out idea, I know that. It's crazy, but I think it can be done. It would, create a lot of things. That's my story idea, sort of story type of idea. The actual story's not been said. That's easily worked out by many of us. But that's my views for this time around. Let's get into the reviews. Reviews this time is going to be very, very unusual. It was released 2 weeks ago. Tom and Jerry, the movie. Why the hell am I doing a film review on Tom and Jerry? Technically, it's a real basic version of Good vs. Bad. But it is a film that has relevancy to being good versus bad. And it's something I saw with my wife in this last week, Charmin. She's not here with me today right now. But I'll give you a review of this. Now, we actually came out with the same score. I'll give you Charmin's review, the score, and I'll give you my score. So it was both 7 out of 10. It's a real basic type of story. It almost like my Big Fat Greek Wedding in an Indian way meets Tom and Jerry in New York. That's the basic sort of idea of the film. In a sort of way of putting it, there's a wedding obviously in there. Tom and Jerry are always up there, their own little antics. It made my wife laugh a lot. She loves the whole Tom and Jerry sort of thing. To me, I'm a little bit over the whole thing, but still, it's a bit of fun. But some of the animation with the, real look in the back, I thought worked well. It was sometimes a little bit distracting, but most part it was really well done, especially when you saw Tom in this rain sort of sequence, being, rained on. It actually looked very computerized, animated. It was so realistic. It was amazing. And let me tell you, this film is actually a good-hearted film. Basic, with a little bit of complexity. Great backdrop being New York. I know it's so typical for a lot of films to do this, but it is just a place that is, the life, the energy of a lot of things. Love it or hate it. But I think, and also there's a lot of actors and actresses in here, big name actors and actresses that I thought, really was willing to be a part of this type of film. I would have thought that it was maybe a little bit beyond them, but especially the lead actress, and I can never remember the actual name. I was trying to think of the film, but she was in one of my favorite films as a superhero film. It was sort of like an anti-hero comedy superhero film, and it had Nicolas Cage in it, and it was a great film for its time. She's the lead actress in here. There's lots of little. You see a lot of people you recognise. It's amazing. I just don't know their names straight off, but there's a lot of, personally, I think, A-grade actors and actresses in this. So 7 out of 10 from Charmin and myself for this film. I know that's going to be quite a sort of how the hell do I give this number to this film and not the other film I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. It's two different type of films, two different sort of understandings. But I just think, it's, good versus bad. That's like Star Wars. That's Tom and Jerry. And I won't give you any more spoilers about the film. But, yeah, check it out if you can. It's just a nice, good-hearted film. Anyway, so that's my review for this time around, along with Shamin. They cannot be here today. But let's get into the interviews. It's too cute. It's two questions I asked myself for you guys out there. And the first question, what can Star Wars learn from Tom and Jerry? Well, I think the thing they can learn from the film is the basic story foundation. Like a real solid intro, body, that's the middle, and the outro. I mean, some people call it acts. I call it sort of an intro, body, and outro. I think if you have the real sort of basic version of that with the sort of a weaving of sort of complex stories in between to layer it, I think that is what Star Wars can learn. I think it just gets a little bit lost in the storytelling, especially with a number of people, sort of putting their input in the story of Star Wars. You can be lost in what direction, but that should be the foundation that's being a little bit lost with Star Wars recently. Don't get me wrong, I still love Star Wars. But that's what Star Wars can really look at this film and learn from, is the basic foundations of a story with sort of like, a nice weaving of little stories in between. And Star Wars does the best. For me, one of the biggest points of Star Wars that I go back on is the psychological part of Star Wars. The good and bad, the in-betweens, and how they work and how they don't work. That psychological part of the storytelling in Star Wars is the layering they should put on top of the basic foundation of a story. To me, it's one of the greatest points of Star Wars, the psychological aspect. Anyway, but obviously in Tom and Jerry wasn't really that psychological, even though there was a little bit of psychology involved in there. But being a sort of generally a kid directed film, meaning directed for kids, it kept it sort of pretty basic. Anyway, that's what Star Wars can learn. What can Star Wars not learn from? That's my second question. What can Star Wars not learn from Tom and Jerry the film? Well, I think they shouldn't. I think Star Wars works best in its darkened environments, interesting colors. I think the one part of this film that works for Tom and Jerry, but it wouldn't work for Star Wars, and it happened a lot, I found, in Phantom Menace, that sort of put a bit of a downer to it, is sunlight, day shots. I just, it really doesn't give that feel to what Star Wars is generally. It's, it is technically a space film, which is dark. Technically, there's a lot of unfortunate negativity, misery, and things like this, which is dark in colors, I think. But I think, personally, look, for example, Phantom Menace, I think the one area that they really killed themselves in was when the Gungans, or the Jar Jar Binks people, went to war with the Separatists, the robots at that time. Not the Separatists, but I think it was just the robots. And it was in a day sort of like setting. The actual look sort of looked like, if you can remember Windows 95, the opening page. The feel was wrong, even though it maybe was telling you something that, it's going from this bright sunny day to a warlike quality. It did look animated, I think, a bit. That's saying in Phantom Menace, and getting a lot from Tom and Jerry. A lot of day shots were in there, a lot of light, bright shots. Star Wars needs to keep to a darkened palette, in my opinion, and they have sort of been doing that. I thought, like, when I saw, like, The Force Awakens, I thought it was very organic. I actually said that. I gave that as a word. It was pretty organic, which was good. It's good, and it worked, but they've got to be very careful, I think, with daylight shots. I think it needs to... The interesting aspect to Star Wars, I find, is when you have just planets or journeys that are interestingly dark. And it doesn't necessarily mean negative, but it just means just sort of dark type stuff. It just creates a great sort of feel for Star Wars. Anyway, that's the answer to my question. What can Star Wars learn from Tom and Jerry is not learn from it is don't have too many day look shots for their sets. That's what I think. Anyway, so that's the Star Wars news, views, reviews for this time around. I'm here on a weekly basis. I've got an Instagram down there, the details, Twitter as well, even YouTube. You can do a comment, whatever you like. Any questions you have or whatever it is you want to know, just let me know. And until next week, keep rocking.